rice is the most widely consumed food on the planet. It's grown all over the world and it's eaten all over the world. Most rice is grown in flooded paddy fields, and flooded fields produce methane, a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's got, I think, 28 times the warming potential of carbon dioxide. It's also the amount of water that's being used in rice farming. Estimates of 40% of global fresh water used in farming is used in rice farming. So that's the problem. I hope you're going to ask me about what's the solution, an alternative way of growing rice, which was actually discovered by farmers who were looking for ways to improve their yields.
You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is the variety of topics. There's so much happening within retail. It's such a fast-moving, dynamic industry. So I'm never short of material. But I absolutely love just how varied the topics are. Last week, I spoke to the creator of The Elf on the Shelf. Next week, we are talking about the barcode. And today, we are doing an episode about rice. Rice is the most consumed food in the world, but did you know that conventional rice farming is actually really bad for the planet? In fact, rice has the second highest emissions footprint of any food globally. The only thing worse is beef. But there is a better way, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Fergus O'Sullivan, founder and CEO of Nice Rice. Fergus wants to bring sustainably farmed rice to the masses and to raise awareness about the true environmental impact of our food choices. Fergus, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi Natalie, great to be here, and thanks for having me. Yeah, so my as you said, my background was in private equity. I worked as an investor for about 8 years across 2 different organizations, and most recently I was working as a consumer specialist investor. So we only invested in kind of small to mid-sized UK consumer brands, which feels like a very brave space to be right now. So I absolutely loved that experience, and we were still working generally with founder-led brands. So it was people who were just incredibly passionate about the brands that they had created, and I guess the kind of big thing for me was seeing firsthand just the power that a lot of these brands actually had, and the kind of the importance of the roles that they played in their consumers' lives. So I mean, there are so many examples, but Bloom and Wild is a nice one. It's a flower gifting brand, lovely brand, and they used to get so many emails from customers and WhatsApp messages from customers saying, really personal stuff about how they'd helped them reconnect with family members that they'd fallen out of touch with. And I remember Bloom and Wild did a thing around, I think it was around Mother's Day, sort of an awareness campaign that, for some people that wasn't a day to celebrate. It was a difficult day. So if you'd lost a mother, or for whatever reason. And again, there was such an outpouring of kind of support for the fact that they as a brand had been kind of sensitive to that sort of issue. And so there are loads and loads of examples like that. And I just remember sort of feeling, I guess really inspired by the importance of the role that brands play in our lives. And more, I wanted to see if I could try and start a brand myself and use that kind of power, if you like, that kind of brand power to do something positive. And yeah, so those are the early feelings that led to me going on and trying to start my own thing.
Yeah, it's such an interesting jump. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that emotional connection that a lot of these smaller brands can establish with their consumers. They can get closer to the customer. And I think increasingly that's what consumers are after. So I'm curious to know, we're going to get into the Nice Rice in just a sec, but I'm curious to know, what was it like, that transition, going from kind of analyzing these businesses, looking at numbers and growth potential, the consumer trends, and then actually moving into the trenches and getting your business off the ground. So how did you find that transition?
Incredibly difficult, I'd say, is the short answer. I probably thought I knew I don't know. I probably would have ranked myself as like a 3 out of 10 on the sort of knowledge level. As a board member of a few of these brands that we had invested in, and working quite closely with the founders and the management teams from these brands, I sort of felt like I was learning quite a lot, sort of through sort of symbiosis, or osmosis rather, and I think when I kind of made the leap and started my own brand, started Nice Rice. I quite quickly realized that actually I was at like 0.3 out of 10. You know what I mean? I knew nothing. I knew literally nothing. So,
Steep
I
learning curve then.
very, very steep learning curve. Yeah. But you know what? I think, I often think about this. I think the kind of naivety that comes with launching a food brand and not being from the food industry is actually a bit of a kind of superpower, because you kind of question everything. And a lot of stuff that's taken for granted, a lot of it is taken for granted for good reason, because people have tried the alternatives and actually this is just the best way of doing this. But sometimes you find things that actually could be done better. It should be done in a different way, and it kind of needs someone to ask the question,
Yeah.
to kind of uncover that. So it's been a very steep learning curve, but actually I wouldn't change it. And I think that, as I say, that naivety has helped us hopefully get to a good place.
Yeah, yeah, and coming in with a fresh pair of eyes, I think is, as an analyst, observing these trends and looking at, which businesses are, have become so successful. It is the ones that kind of come in and disrupt the status quo and aren't afraid to take those risks and throw ideas against the wall. So really interesting to hear your views there. So let's get into the problem that you identified, which is that rice is not a very sustainable food. And I get the impression that most consumers aren't really aware of this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. That's kind of my take. But rice is one of the oldest, most widely consumed foods. Can you explain to our listeners, Fergus, why is rice production so bad for the planet, and what are you doing differently?
So, and please do jump in if I go on too long here, Natalie. This is where I can get into a very geeky territory, because I find it fascinating. But the short story is that most rice is grown in flooded paddy fields, and flooded fields produce methane. Methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's got, I think, 28 times the warming potential of carbon dioxide. And as you rightly said, rice is the most widely consumed food on the planet. It's grown all over the world and it's eaten all over the world. So there are a lot of paddy fields around the world producing methane. So when you add all of that up, it gets to a very big, scary number. It's not just methane. It's also nitrous oxide is another very, very powerful greenhouse gas. I think that's 200 plus times the warming potential of carbon dioxide. And that's, again, a kind of byproduct of the way that rice is conventionally farmed. So that's sort of the bad news. And I guess I should probably mention as well, it's not just the warming, the greenhouse gas production. It's also the amount of water that's being used in rice farming. So all of those flooded fields are flooded because each day the farmer will, turn a generator on and pump groundwater out of the ground to irrigate the fields. And that is using an enormous amount of water. Estimates of 40% of global fresh water used in farming is used in rice farming. So
Wow.
it's really an enormous amount of water. 5,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of basmati rice. So I mean, really staggering kind of amount of water required. Which is a huge problem in lots of parts of the world where rice is kind of intensively farmed. They're also very water scarce. So you have this kind of two kind of sides of the problem, I guess. There's the greenhouse gas emissions and there's the water use. So that's the problem. I hope you're going to ask me about what's the solution,
What
because
is the
there is a solution.
solution? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to
but
hear. What are you guys doing differently
yeah,
there?
it's not all bad news. When I first learned about these issues with kind of conventional rice farming, it was from a book called Drawdown, which is all about different things that we can do to try and reverse climate change in their language. And there's a chapter on rice farming, and it kind of opens up with some of the scary statistics that I've just given you, and very quickly it gets on to the solution, which is an alternative way of growing rice, which was actually discovered by farmers who were looking for ways to improve their yields. So farmers love this way of growing rice because it's higher yielding. That's the first really important thing, I think.
Hmm.
It's a very sort of farmer friendly method of growing rice. And it's relatively simple to do. So you basically let the field dry out, during the growing season. So rather than kind of permanently flooding the field, you let it dry out. That encourages root growth from the plant, so you grow a stronger, healthier crop, which produces more grain. It obviously saves a lot of water, but also by letting the field dry out, you are stopping the production of methane. You're stopping the microbes in the soil growing in the soil that
Okay.
produce methane as a byproduct. So I did tell you I was going to get into geeky territory, and I've done it.
Let's get geeky.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've gone way too detailed here.
I'm into plants and gardening, so I'm with you so far.
Okay, good. Well, I'm pleased to hear it. So basically, farmers let the fields dry out during the growing season. It's called alternate wetting and drying. AWD is the acronym. You might sort of see it in some places, and that's the key thing. It saves water and it stops the methane production. So on our actual farms, data that we've collected with our farmers shows about a 49% reduction in methane, and very similar percentage reduction in water use as well. So
Wow, that's huge.
quite a significant difference, and all of that kind of environmental benefit has come at the same time that the farmers' yields have improved by 10%. So the farmers are happy; they're improving their livelihood. They're growing more rice from the same piece of land. They're being paid a premium as well for farming in these low impact ways, and it's much better for the environment.
And what about the consumer? Because if I pick up a pack of rice in the supermarket, as a consumer, I'm totally oblivious to everything that goes on before that gets to the supermarket shelf. So, and I guess to kind of back up a little bit, I mean, something we talk about a lot on the podcast is the say do gap, or the kind of intention behavior gap, where
Yeah,
all consumers will say, yes, we want to buy, more sustainable foods, but we don't want to pay for it. We don't want to be inconvenienced by it. So, what's your take on this? How do you balance things like, flavor, sourcing, sustainability, when they don't necessarily always pull in the same direction?
yeah. Um, I would say that's been the most challenging thing. Um, so, having started the business with a very pure kind of sustainability purpose, to try and bring with a first brand that exclusively sources all of our rice from farmers that are using this lower impact farming method, mainly so that UK consumers have access to rice that's been grown in this sort of lower impact way. But what's been very quickly clear to me is that actually you need to start with quality. You need to start by communicating quality. And I guess the good news for us as a brand is that I kind of went looking for the most sustainable rice I could find. And actually, what I found was the best quality rice as well. I do think they go hand in hand. And even I was out in India visiting some new farming communities that we're working with this year, a couple of weeks ago, and it was so great to hear the farmers in a very candid way. They're not performing for my benefit at all. They are. It was brilliant meeting them and hearing a lot of their gripes with things as well. So they weren't sugarcoating anything, but it was brilliant to hear them saying how the crop that they're growing now is visibly so much healthier than the crop that they were growing when they were following conventional farming practices.
Yeah.
So it is a healthier, better quality grain that is being produced. And then on top of that, we are being super, super, again, very geeky about the sub varieties that we're sourcing. So there's 20 plus different varieties of basmati rice. It's not all the same. It's very different kind of texture, aroma, flavor between the different sub varieties. So most brands will buy different varieties and mix them together, blend them together, typically to try and bring cost down. And that'll be the basmati that you'll buy. We buy one sub variety from one farming community, and we never blend between origins or harvests or varieties. So I like to think of it as if you were getting rice yourself direct from the farm, this is how you do it. You'd go and get one type of basmati from one place. You wouldn't go and get 10 different types from different countries and all over the place. So it's kind of the purest form of the highest quality basmati that we can find.
Yeah. It's so interesting, especially because rice is a category that is, it is somewhat commoditized. And I
Mm.
imagine that private label penetration is probably pretty high. And
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that right? Yeah.
yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. And that obviously puts a lot of pressure on you in terms of pricing. And I guess, I guess you kind of answered it, but is there anything else that you can share about how you're differentiating in this category that some might say is pretty commoditized?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. To be honest, I think for me and for Nice Rice, I think the future of food needs to be built on connection rather than commodities. And just like in coffee, it is probably a pretty well trodden path. And I think maybe olive oil is a few years ahead of rice, but on the same curve where people want to know where their ingredients are coming from. They want to know where their food comes from, and why is it better quality, and why does single origin matter, and actually is there a taste difference? And the answer with all of these what have been commodities, the answer is always yes, there is a difference, and it's exactly the same in rice. So we are kind of going down that, trying to kind of follow that same path, and hopefully bring consumers on the journey with us to appreciating that when you don't treat rice like a commodity, you can discover extraordinary quality and differences in taste and texture and aroma that you didn't know existed. All of which can help, for people who love food. And I get that it's a luxury to pay a premium for your food these days. It's 100% a luxury. So I'm not taking that for granted. But if you can afford to pay a small premium for your food, then it's a way of elevating your kind of everyday staples.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the need for transparency. I mean, that's especially with all, every day it feels like there's, new tech developments that are allowing us as consumers to be even
Mm,
more informed. And I say a lot on the podcast that I think we are hyper informed when it comes to pricing information, product information, but when it comes to sustainability and sourcing, and I just feel like that even if you look outside of food, in clothing, we've got digital product passports coming in, and I just feel as consumers, we are going to be, so educated, and our expectations are already through the roof, but it's just going to continue. And I think in terms of, how, allowing us to be, to make those very informed decisions. And that means different things for different people. As you say, for some people, it might be price, find me the best deal. It might be, I need gluten free, find me that quickly in the supermarket. Help me buy something that is high quality. It's a
mm,
sustainable product as well. So that is the direction to travel. So really interesting. And
definitely.
also I guess like with TikTok and how we've got Gen Z shoppers, all shoppers really, I think, exploring that sort of space. Not everyone, I shouldn't say all shoppers, but it's not just Gen Z, but definitely there is this trend towards younger demographics discovering new trends and then going into stores and looking for that story, for that emotional connection.
Well, I think one of the things that surprised me actually, and it's been a really kind of nice surprise for me, is when I've been speaking to some of our kind of most loyal shoppers, our heaviest repeat shoppers. Uh, I was probably expecting a lot of them to be, the younger demographic who maybe are more openly kind of interested and aware of climate change, and therefore, reflecting that in more sustainable kind of purchases. And the surprise for me was that there are people from all over the country, old, young, male, female, every different socioeconomic group you can think of, who are buying our rice. So really, and they all say the same thing, that they're kind of very different people on the surface, but actually they all express the same thing, which is I like to know where my food comes from, and I want to be part of building a better food system. I know that the food system's a big part of the problem with climate change, and the kind of direction of travel on climate change. So I want to be part of the solution, and So that was very heartening, actually, for me. It's not just young people. It does seem to be, there are people out there of as I say, every age, every part of the country, every different socioeconomic group, who kind of share that kind of core attitude, and that core care. So I find that very kind of heartening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd like to just briefly talk about your launch into retail, because this was also somewhat unconventional. Most brands will start small. They might go direct to consumer and build that brand awareness, or, maybe they're selling into markets or independents. But you went right into 260 Waitrose stores. And then soon after that, you were listed on Ocado. So can you tell us a little bit more about the launch and some of those early learnings?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, hats off to Waitrose for taking a massive punt on us. I mean, it's great that they're putting they put their money where their mouth is on that one. Obviously, all the retailers have sustainability agendas, but for Waitrose to come out and give us that vote of confidence early on was amazing. So hats off to them. And they've continued to be very supportive ever since. But it was really challenging, Natalie, to be honest with you. It was very, very challenging. I think a huge learning curve for me personally. And just, I guess, the realities of being in 259 stores. You can't go and visit 259 stores yourself. You go from being a kind of one-man band or a three-man band as we are, kind of doing as much as you can. You actually just cannot visit that number of stores. So you then have to start just the sort of scale of the kind of practical stuff just suddenly step changes in a way that I probably wasn't fully ready for. So, just making sure kind of we had products on the right shelf in all those stores. That takes a bit of doing. And again, the Waitrose team were brilliant helping with that. But there are all sorts of very practical, very kind of fundamental things which I probably wasn't totally ready for. So we managed to unpick a lot of those problems quite quickly and get to a good place. But yes, it was a very, very steep learning curve. And I would say probably not recommended to others. I think that the well-trodden path of starting with independence and kind of learning the ropes and kind of scaling bit by bit, there's a lot to be said for that kind of more common sense approach, I think.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And just one more question for you, Fergus. What shifts are you seeing, if any, when it comes to retail buyers' expectations? So I think you've been going for is it
2.5 years? Yeah.
2.5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen much change? Obviously, the market has changed a lot, and there's a lot going on at a macro level. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment. Have there been any shifts?
No, you know what? I think it's in a very kind of heartening way. I think the big retailers continue to be very supportive of brands that are trying to drive progress and trying to kind of drive change in some of these big old categories. So no, I wouldn't say there's been a lot of change from the kind of retail side. I'd say there's been a lot of change from the consumer side. I think definitely sustainability as a word and as a kind of space to be operating in feels very different now to how it did 2 or 3 years ago. So I think that's probably been the main thing for us, is just navigating the way that consumers think about sustainability and messaging within that space. I think has changed a lot and continues to change. So that will be something that we're going to be working on for as long as Nice Rice is around. So I think that will always be a bit of a moving journey.
Fantastic. Fergus, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have you on and get your views.
Thanks, Natalie. Great to be here. Thanks very much for having me and lovely to be with you.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.